Of course, Kuby Energy is the proud presenter each and every week of Positive Reflections. So this is how we kick off our week on the right foot. Yeah, the pipeline's probably going to get pulled by President Biden. Yeah, the provincial government plans to lop off the top of our mountains to make way for coal mining. And yeah, we're still in the middle of a pandemic. But check this out. Greg Monsma, who's a good friend of this show, sent along this video of Nala. Nala the dog has learned to open doors and, is even ramping it up further, learning to play music. Check this out. That's right. Nala the German Shepherd has learned to play the piano and sing. And we love that video, Greg. Thanks for passing it along. I also wanted to pass along this. Check this out. Board games have been big for a lot of folks through the course of this pandemic. And Ilya has reached out to the show and said, here's a picture that represents exactly our pandemic experience. Ilya says, my fiance and I decided to embrace our passion for board games, and we started a website and a YouTube where we take a look and we share games in hopes of inspiring more people to come together and play board games. And it's been so refreshing to dive into our passions. It's a positive pandemic story. I also wanted to read this from Leanne. Leanne took the time to send us an email, and she said, after suffering undiagnosed with BPD, says, I don't know how much your listeners are going to know about this, but basically it's been a real challenge for me since I was a teenager. I was off work for 3 years. I've been through suffering and testing and delays, but I'm so happy to announce to the real talkers out there that I'm going back to work on March 1st, COVID willing. Leanne says there's been challenges, but I have so many awesome plans and goals, including, but not limited to, producing true crime videos and maybe even streaming my gaming, which is something I've wanted to do for ages, but I've been just too sick. I'll tell you, says Leanne, having time off sure gives one a lot of time to do research, including learning how to better ourselves. 2020 was a hard year for everybody, but it gave me my life back. It was a year of recovery for me, and I'm coming out of 2020 a better person than I was going in. Thank you to Kuby Energy for Positive Reflections. Thank you for Real Talk. We need this sunshine. That from Leanne. And finally, on the subject of friendship and reconciliation, I talked last week about blocking people on Twitter, whether or not it's appropriate for politicians to block people, whether or not it's appropriate for public people like myself to block people on Twitter. Well, I got an email from Mike, and Mike says, Ryan, I'm watching your show where you're talking about blocking people, and you told producer Sam that you had about 600 people blocked on Twitter. He says, I unfortunately am one of those 600. He says, I believe it happened after I tweeted this. He says, for context, someone had been talking about a former colleague of yours, Danielle Smith, and her claims about hydroxychloroquine as a cure to COVID. He says, well, I tweeted, I don't get how a quality guy like you can co-host election specials with her. And after that, I was blocked. He says, now I unnecessarily and recklessly brought you into a subject to try to sow division between you and a colleague during the onset of a pandemic when there was great uncertainty. He says, I unreservedly apologize for such a low blow on a public forum. He says, I appreciate the way you're able to facilitate discussions. Now let's have some real talk. The real talk is that I think I was a little touchy on that. The real talk is I think I was a little oversensitive on that. The real talk is maybe I was having a bad day and maybe I blocked Michael when he didn't deserve it. So I'm just happy to tell you here on Positive Reflections that Mike and I over the weekend reconciled, and we're buddies again on Twitter, and good things are happening here as Real Talkers come together each and every weekday morning. Mike, thanks for reaching out. I'm glad to reconnect with you. Thanks to everybody who sends us your positive reflections through the week at talk@ryanjesperson.com. We know it's a tough Monday with news about the pipeline and everything else. Some of you may be celebrating it. We want to hear from both of you. And we'll be back at it tomorrow morning, Tuesday, right here on Real Talk at 8:30 Mountain Time. We'll talk to you then.